All right, let's dive into the world of ancient Chinese poetry. But forget what you think you know, because this isn't just about pretty words on a page. We're talking about a world of hidden stories and secret codes. A world where a single poem could make you a legend. Or, yeah, it could get you killed.
So what if I told you that for centuries, the most powerful poems in China weren't just written down, they were actually sung? What if they all followed these invisible melodies, these sort of musical blueprints that decided everything, their rhythm, their length, and even the exact emotion they were supposed to make you feel?
Well, that secret has a name, Cipai. The easiest way to think of it is like a template, or, yeah, a blueprint for a poem. Every single Cipai has its own name and its own unique structure, a set melody and a rhythm that a poet would then fill in with their own words. It's kind of like the musical DNA that gives every one of these poems its life.
And these Cipai, these tune patterns, are the absolute keys to unlocking the incredible stories we're going to get into today. They're not just some dry technical rules. They're living vessels for history, for tragedy, and for romance.
And just listen to some of these names. There are nearly 1,000 of them in total, and their names alone just paint this incredible picture. You've got some that are super fresh and lively, like Chasing Butterflies. Then you have others that are romantic and kind of lingering, like Candlelight's Red Flicker. Each one gives you a clue, a little hint about the mood and the story it's built to carry.
So let's start with a story where the stakes could not possibly be higher. This is about a poet king whose words, set to one of these ancient tunes, would end up sealing the fate of his entire kingdom and ultimately his own life. Okay, so let's meet Liu. This is a man who was born a prince. And really, he was destined to be an artist. But fate have other plans, and he was forced to become a king. As the last ruler of the Southern Tang, he was honestly way more interested in poetry and music than he ever was in politics. So when his kingdom was, almost inevitably, conquered by the powerful new Song dynasty, he was taken captive. He ended up living as a prisoner for 3 long, humiliating years.
And as a captive, the suffering Liu endured was just unimaginable. His country was gone, his title was just a joke, and the new emperor Zhao Guanyi was this incredibly cruel and jealous man who even violated Liu's wife. Pushed to the absolute edge, Liu did the only thing he had left. He wrote a poem.
On his 42nd birthday, he poured all of his grief into the Cipai called Yumeiren, or the beautiful lady Yu. The final lines just unleash this ocean of despair. How much sorrow can one man have? As much as a river of spring water flowing east. But here's the thing. When the emperor heard this poem, he wasn't moved. Not at all. He was furious. He didn't see sadness. He saw an unconquerable spirit, a poetic genius that made his own power seem small. And for that, he ordered Liu to be killed with poisoned wine. A king executed for a song. So, a poem could be a death sentence. We've seen that. But it could also be a shield. Our next story isn't about despair at all, but about this incredible, almost unbelievable resilience in the face of total disaster. This is the story of Su Shi, who is, to this day, one of China's most beloved poets. He was absolutely brilliant, but his sharp wit made him some very powerful enemies. He ended up getting arrested in this massive political purge called the Crow Terrace Poetry Trial, which was basically a political witch hunt where his own poems were twisted and used as evidence that he was committing treason. He just barely escaped execution and was exiled to this remote, miserable little town.
So one day, while he's in exile, Su Shi and his friends get caught in a sudden downpour. Everyone else just panics, right? They're running for cover, complaining about the rain. But Su Shi, he just keeps walking. Later, he wrote a poem about it using the Cipai Ding Feng Bo, which means calming the storm. And in this poem, the literal storm becomes this powerful metaphor for his political one. His friend's panic represents the world's chaos, but he just walks right through it, completely unfazed.
And the poem ends with this just incredible moment of enlightenment. Looking back at the bleak place I came from, I go home. There is no storm, nor is there sun. What he's saying is that once you've found that peace inside yourself, the storms on the outside, whether they're political or literal, they just can't touch you anymore. It doesn't matter if there's wind and rain or sunshine. What matters is the calm you carry inside.
Okay, so we've seen poetry as a death sentence and as a shield. But let's go back to our tragic poet king, Liu. Because long before his downfall, he wasn't writing about sorrow. No, he was at the center of a royal scandal so juicy it was immortalized in a poem that spread like absolute wildfire. All right, so here's the story. While his wife, the Empress Dazhou, was on her deathbed, her beautiful younger sister, Xiaozhou, came to the palace to take care of her. Li Yu was immediately just captivated, and pretty soon they started a secret affair, sneaking around the palace together at night. But here's the thing about Li Yu. He wasn't just a king having an affair. He was a poet, and he just could not resist writing about it. He set his passion to the tune of Pusaman, and he wrote these incredibly vivid, really intimate details. This one line describes his lover, tiptoeing on fragrant steps in socks, holding her golden shoes, just so she wouldn't make a sound. But the truly bold part? He didn't keep these poems to himself. Oh no, he shared them, and before you know it, the entire court was whispering about the affair.
Well, the scandal reached its tragic peak when his dying wife finally realized what was going on. Utterly heartbroken by the betrayal from both her husband and her own sister, she turned her face to the wall and refused to look at either of them ever again, right up until the moment she died. It's just a devastating human story, all encoded in this one beautiful poem.
So from the deepest sorrow to scandalous passion, Cipai could capture it all. But their legacy, it goes even further than that. For centuries, these exact same tune patterns became the way that people told the grandest, most epic tales in all of Chinese culture.
You might actually recognize these words. This is the magnificent opening to one of the greatest novels ever written, The Romance of the Three Kingdoms. The rolling Yangtze flows east, its waves washing away all heroes. But what most people have no idea about is that this legendary opening, it's not just prose. It's a poem, written by a Ming Dynasty scholar named Anxiang to the Cipai Lin Jiangyan, a tune pattern from the Song Dynasty hundreds of years earlier. Now that is the legacy of Cipai, a musical code that carried stories across entire dynasties.
From a king's last breath to an exile's inner peace, from a scandalous love affair to an epic history, these musical blueprints gave voice to the entire spectrum of human experience. They show us that behind every structure, every code, there is always a story just waiting to be told. Which kind of leaves us with one last thought. If your life were set to one of these ancient tunes, what story would it sing?